And we are back with another episode of the Watch and Cut channel. So today we're going to be talking about big knives, large knives, because large knives need lovin' too.
Fat chicks need love too, but they gotta pay.
Right? And honestly, this is not my forte, this is not my specialty, but I do have some significantly larger knives that I thought I'd share to kind of complete the whole custom series of recommended knives from my collection, things that you guys might be able to find interesting or take a look at. So here we go with my large knives.
Giggity.
Now, before we get started with my knives, honestly, if you really want to see some big knives, you should go check out Dirk Warning.
Kind of comparisons here. The Demko AD20. It's just, I don't even know what to say. These things are just so massive and nuts.
That's what she said.
That's my joke. Damn it, Dwight.
Now, Dirk's got an amazing collection of stuff. He is what I think is more of the connoisseur or specialist, if you will, when it comes to oversized knives. These knives might not be even that huge to some of you, but these are big to me, and these are the bigger size custom knives in my collection because we still stayed with the custom theme of things. So now I do have other larger knives as well, but I kept it to customs, so we're gonna keep with that theme. And let's get started. So the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be this guy right here. This is the Farid MEHR Custom K2. Now, Farid MEHR is a custom knife maker out of England, and he makes this K2 model now for many, many, many years. And it's just his thing. It looks very much kind of like an oversized Spyderco. And at one time, it was actually a production Spyderco. They did make a production Spyderco version of this knife. And in like fashion, this knife has utilized some pretty crazy steel. I know back in the day, he was already using Rex 121 and some other stuff like that, which those K2s do exist. They come generally in two sizes. This is the large, and there's a small one, which I own as well. And they generally come in D3 tool steel, which is what this version is. Now, D3 is it's an upgrade to D2, but it's a very coarse type tool steel. And he puts a nice convex edge on it with a huge bevel, which big bevels is not always everybody's favorite thing as far as the aesthetics department. For me, I like it. I think it just makes the knife look even more aggressive. And I think for a convex edge and leaving enough kind of meat behind the edge, I think that's actually not a bad idea in this case. I really wish he didn't terminate the edge in the manner that he did, maybe like a half cut, kind of like the Damian Small Saurus I showed in the last video. Instead, he's got more of a reduction here for the stop pin, so it locks when it's in the closed position. Now with the K2s, you have a really long bar. He does this kind of squiggly cut on it, and you can see it's got an over travel stop because it's actually quite a long cut spring. So I would say it's kind of more necessary in a knife like this. I think with especially with such like more of a reduced material right here, you can easily lose the memory with something of this size and thickness.
That's what she said. Oh, no, not that. Just come on, you guys, let's do it.
Now, one thing that the K2s notoriously do, this one does it too, so does my small one. They always have lock stick. That's just what they do. And sometimes it's pretty dramatic, and sometimes it's almost non-existent. So if you flick this thing open quite hard, you can see already I'm already pushing the blood completely out of my thumb trying to disengage this thing. So yeah, it's a thing with these, and it's quite common. So if you get a K2, just be warned.
It's a middle finger to the fans is what it is.
As far as the pocket clip, it's a titanium clip. It works actually quite nicely. Doesn't have a whole lot of space, so it doesn't, the knife doesn't really move around much, which is a good thing, I guess. And you can reverse it, just kind of like a hinder. He's got the tab right here that's kind of milled out, so that's kind of cool that he did that. You can see the Farid name on the bevel right here. It's kind of lasered in, kind of hard to see, but that's where he always puts his maker's mark. And yeah, you got these really cool titanium screws holding this whole thing together, just 2 of them. And then you got this barrel spacer that's been milled out, really heavily barreled out, and it's a cross of all different colors of the spectrum. You can see gold tones under here, and then there's blue. D3 is one thing I can let you know. You do have to oil it quite often or it will stain. I've had to clean this knife up a few times for lack of maintenance, so I don't do any more lack of maintenance with this knife. It's always oiled and well maintained. Even with the EDC stuff, I still rather put a little coat of oil on that. So anyways, that is the Humongoid Custom K2, the king of the biggest knives of all of my collection. I like them plumpy. So the next one I'm going to show you guys is going to be this guy right here. This is a Mehanik Custom. Now, it doesn't really have a model name because back then he just called them like 40mm blade or 42mm blade. And that's pretty much about it. I found him on Instagram and I saw a knife relatively similar to this one that he made, just a little bit smaller. And I asked him, hey, can you make me one of those? He says, for sure.
That was easy.
So one cool thing I noticed with this maker is he likes to play with very fancy steels. This knife was made for me back in 2015, and we're already kind of with like the S125V territory, which was really kind of unheard of at the time. It wasn't really a popular steel, so you would find it on a select few custom knives. So that was kind of cool to see him kind of using these really cool steels. And another thing that kind of drew me in is his really nice, perfect fullers that he does. That was kind of a signature thing that I've seen on a lot of his knives, and just love the way the light reflects off of it. And the edge is, I mean, laser sharp. Like it's typical, mirror polished. Very similar to what you'll find on like a Culture Tech. Even sharper than a Shirogorov by far.
Are you sure?
Like somebody used a Wicked Edge or something like that. So very cool. The action is freaking awesome. It's on steel bearings. It's very, very smooth. It just drops shut like crazy, but controlled. The detent's a bit light for my taste, but I can live with it. The flipper tab is a little bit unfinished. I think it should be shaped a little bit more. Other than those two things, I love this knife. And another thing that he's really well known for is kind of these lava looking pivots. Now they do have a tool with them, so you can take this knife down. And I really, really like that about this knife. Overall, this knife's like 98% there for me. So since then, I've ordered actually 3 knives total. This one, a clip point he did for me in blue carbon fiber, which was a smaller knife. And then this one right here, which is a Persian style blade. But this one, again, in some really crazy steel.
Giggity goo.
This one is a Rex 121 with a Damascus jacket. So you got a stainless steel Damascus jacket to protect the blade. And then on the core, on the inside, the core steel is going to be your Rex 121 tool steel. It's a very, very, very hard steel.
So she said.
It's a little bit more difficult to heat treat. Sometimes that makes you a little nervous when you buy a knife like this, because if it's not, it's really kind of pointless to even call it Rex. But if it's been annealed properly and properly tempered and heat treated, this stuff is definitely a super steel, and you guys can look more into it. I think maybe at some point I might do a video on steels. Although that's not my specialty, I do know like some stuff, and I can kind of show you guys what I shop for as far as steels are concerned. But yeah, this is really unusual. That's kind of one of the main reasons why I bought it. So we use this toxic carbon fiber, and then he did this kind of galvanized steel with this really cool toxic finish on the clip and right here as well. Kind of just did more of a standard like gold bronzed backspacer, and I think the whole thing ties really, really well. A lot of people get a kick out of this knife, and this knife was made quite a few years later, and I could tell you already, you know, we got a much stronger detent. This knife actually feels perfect. All the things I kind of complained about, you can see he's got a very nice shaped flipper now, a little bit more grip to it, so you definitely feel it, and kind of the same smooth controlled action. Nice and smoothly controlled drop like that. It's a nice tuned action, and I think it's keeps the knife nice and safe as well. So there's the Mehanik Customs. Now, one thing also I should mention about Mehanik custom knives is that they are very well priced. You're talking like sub $1,000 custom knives, and these are handmade custom knives. I think this guy was probably closer to like 450 bucks, but keep in mind that was like in 7 years ago or something in that range. This guy was more closer to like the $700 range. But man, what a bargain for a knife like this, right? It's just an absolutely beautiful knife. So while we're in the Russian thing, let's keep going with the Russian thing, because I do have a few more Russians. So the next one I'm going to bring out here is going to be the Kultratech Svarn 3. Now, I love this company. This is actually one of my favorite brands, if you guys want to know. Kultratech is just very unique. I know it's not for everybody as far as the way they look. They're not for everybody as far as the size, because they generally do make bigger knives. They've made some smaller knives. I have a very tiny little custom slip joint that they also produced. But Kultratech is just one of those companies that just does their own thing. Now, this one's running on washers that have been really precisely polished and measured and everything. Everything about Kultratech knives is about tolerance. All the construction on Kultratech knives is usually more complicated than it needs to be, just like a complicated watch, just because, right? You can even see the scalloping inside the liner lock here to give you extra traction. Usually Kultratech knives are completely thought out, and then after the construction is thought out, then they want to add something complicated to it. Well, you have carbon fiber scales with milled titanium inside the carbon fiber that's inlaid, but it's mounted from the bottom. So it's kind of interesting. They do very kind of intricate construction type knives. Even things like a pocket clip can be a little bit more complicated, as you can see. So I love that about Kultratech. They're just really well known for really cool kind of multi-piece construction knives. They kind of do these things in small runs, so they're around for a little while, and after they stop making them, they move on to other stuff. But I don't know. There's just something about these knives. They're just super damn cool. Now, another thing I want to highlight about Culture Tech is they do put these also very crazy mirror edges on it. And their blade finishes are flawless. They do these blade finishes actually by hand, guys. If you guys were to see the procedures that they use for a lot of their polishing and stuff, it's pretty wild. And you can also see a lot of their stuff on Instagram. All the milling, everything is just absolutely complicated, and I love it. So this is the Svarn 3. Again, you got kind of like bearing smooth, even smoother than bearing action. Got a deployment hole right here for those who like to reverse or spidey flick. And then you got a nice low profile flipper tab.
Oh, yes! Yes! I'll have what he's having.
If you want to deploy it that way. That was the first Culture Tech I ever bought myself. And I gotta say, you know, it didn't stop there. So next, let's get another Culture Tech while we're along with the brand. This is the one that I ordered actually directly from them. This is the Culture Tech Urs. Now, Urs means knife.
That's crazy.
Plain and simple, guys. That's really all of what it means. And I saw this knife when it was first getting developed, and you know, I saw some sneak peeks of it, and I contacted them immediately and put my name on the list for a build, because I thought that this was just absolutely the coolest thing ever. The blade shape is kind of like a chef's knife. It's got just a really nice cutlery look to it. Or you could even interpret it being an aggressive Wharncliffe. It does have kind of a mirror finish, as you can see here. And the edge is really just exactly the same. Another mirrored edge on this one. So one thing about knives like this, if you make a mistake flipping it around and stuff, you're going to cut yourself good. It's going to the bone.
Tis but a scratch.
But the other flip side is this is a serious knife. This is a serious cutting tool.
A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't.
And I love that about it. Now the handle, I do admit, is a bit thicker, but I actually like a good purchase on the handle. And for me, the thickness of this handle is perfect. And they go as far as to complicate things even further by putting these complicated type mill marks into it. Also very nice design. You can see when the light really reflects off of it, it'll show you kind of the design idea and how they probably penciled it into the design before they brought it to life. Those typical big screws that they do include the tool for are right there. And am I a fan of them? To me, they look like, you know, big old like caps for old school cars. I mean, they're okay, you know. This is an example of a maker that does make their own hardware. So, you know, I don't scoff at that at all. Now, you guys are going to notice a couple other things other than the beautiful milling on the handles and the mirror finish on the blade. Perfect centering. But you're also going to notice that there is a button right here. Now, you can't just push the button down. It doesn't do anything if you do that. You actually have to push this button forward and then in. And what that does is
What does this button do?
it disengages the liner on the inside and allows the knife to close. You can see perfect centering. And I think as far as flipper tabs, a lot of people and makers have gotten clever with what they try to do. When it came to chasing the perfect flipper tab, this was the first knife that I did it with. the Shirogorov Sigma, and we'll talk about this one. But honestly, I think this is the best flipper tab I've ever seen designed. And you can just see the profile of it is almost non-existent. But when you do roll it out, plenty of grip and the blade flies out. So I love that about this knife. Once you disengage the knife, it does require just a little bit. From the way this knife feels, it is, I believe, on washers, not bearings. But you can see the action on it is very nice, very controllable. Nothing slamming into anything else, you know, unless you force it to. But otherwise, it's just a really nice, smooth operating knife. Now, just to be a little bit fancier, they've also included a titanium corkscrew inside the backspacer. So you can, you know, open or decork your fancy knife when you show your friends your amazing, you know, $1,900 Russian knife. While you cut any sort of cheese that, you know, demands cutting. So that's the Culture-Tech Urs. That is definitely one of my favorites. Please don't ask, I'm not selling this one. I'm not selling, I think, any of the Culture-Techs right now. So, yeah, but they're pretty cool to look at, aren't they? So next one is, well, there's another Culture-Tech on the table, so we're just going to bring that guy out. Now you guys see I brought out the DP Leatherworks again because, like the last video, I brought out a custom slip joint, and this one actually is by Culture-Tech. This one's got a really slim blade in it. And, yeah, you can just tell how nice and thin all the materials have been constructed. Now, on the flip side, you got this really crazy carbon fiber. You can see how it reflects the light. This is not by Fat Carbon. This is by a Russian carbon fiber maker. I can't remember the company's name, but they are on Instagram, and they do make some really wild carbon fiber. So this particular one right here, I actually am embarrassed to say I don't remember the model number, but here it is right here because I can look at it later and pop that into the video. But it does have a resemblance of the Urs, just more of a slip joint version. Now, when it comes to slip joint, one feature I really like is when they do integrate the choil, because if for any reason you start to fold over, that gives you an unsharpened area to put pressure or resistance against the blade from it folding over your hand. So that's one thing I really, really appreciate about slip joints with integrated finger choil. Now, another important logo you're going to see on these usually is on the lock side, and it's going to say Jan Hook. And Jan Hook is a good mention, actually, because Jan Hook is who does the heat treat for the Culture-Tech knives. One thing that Culture-Tech does very, very well with the Jan Hook heat treat is they accomplish heat treat numbers usually that surpass most. Like for M390, a lot of people like to be in the 62 range to call it kind of harder M390. They'll do it at 64. That sort of thing. I believe actually this LMAX here is at 64 HRC, and it has that pretty typical crazy mirror finish edge on it that will chop your finger off if you make a mistake.
Victory is mine.
It does have very smooth action. I believe that this thing is on bronze washers, but it is just a ginormous slip joint that honestly really deserves to be here in the lineup. So continuing with the last Russian knife in the collection right here is going to be this Shirogorov Sigma. Now this is kind of a special knife to me because this was the first time I kind of chased a limited edition Shirogorov. There was this particular one that I wanted, and there was two simple reasons why I wanted this. Because at the time, there was no other knife that I knew of that had such a cool and weird tiny little flipper tab on it. And I thought that was just wow. And then the other reason why was because of this Persian blade. Persian blades is one of those things I think is less attractive to some. But for me, it's actually a blade shape that I really enjoy. So for me, this Shirogorov Sigma was just a knife that I thought was, you know, almost like Grail level. Because when it came out, you know, this is one of their typical collaboration limited projects where they only make 200 and that's it, no more. So I was lucky enough to acquire one of these. And these are kind of next level when it comes to Shirogorov knives. They're not like the productions. For example, you'll see this one's got a mirror edge, whereas your typical production ones don't. And you can check out, actually, you'll be able to see that on my Shirogorov Neon Zero video I did prior. But this one's got just a really crisp, mirror precise edge on it. The stonewash is absolutely flawless. It's kind of right in the middle of where you will see mirror to stonewash, right in the center. Really, really nice and reflective, but not too much. And you'll see Dmitry Sinkovich right here. And you also see Sinkovich hardware on this knife. So that is a good and a bad thing. Taking this thing apart is going to be impossible, but it's just such a cool knife. This is more something that I actually do treat a little bit more like a safe queen, I guess is what you would say. It does come out, it has cut stuff, and I will carry it, but probably not as often as other stuff, just because I can't take it apart and it's nearly impossible to replace. So that is the Russians. There are a lot of Russian knives because they just do bigger knives most often. Next one here is going to be this guy. Now, some people are going to jump through this screen and say, but Alex, that is not a custom. That is a factory custom. That is not the same as a custom knife. I beg thee differ because these were released in limited batches. They're quite different from the standard 0452 that it's based off of. And it's my video, so it's my rules. So yeah, it's a custom. All right, so anyways, this is a knife I actually didn't really think I was going to acquire at some point because, again, like this guy right here, it was released for a limited production of numbers. This is back when ZT was cool, actually, and they used to do some really crazy designs with blade steels, and this is a sub frame block design here. You can see it's got this crazy CNC milled clip. Look at the back spacer. It's just super wild. I mean, this knife, there's nothing, absolutely nothing simple about it. Everything's been changed from this to an 0452. The scales are thicker and more contoured. Again, different locking systems, different pivot screws, and you got this really cool blade that's actually constructed of two different steels. So that's pretty awesome right there. So yeah, factory customs are freaking awesome. Now this ZT0454, I do see them on the ZT groups for sale from time to time, and about $1,200 to $1,400 is what I expect to see them at, which is pretty much where I bought mine at. Cool knife if you guys can find one. I mean, honestly, just one of the ZT's best as far as the factory customs go. I still think the 777 is the best. I do have that knife, but it is smaller, so I didn't bring it out. Maybe that knife should have made it to the medium-sized customs, but we have enough here. So you guys probably been wondering what's in this sock right here. And I think we're going to save that for last because, yeah, it's the only object with suspense here. So let's take this one next. This is the Brian Tighe Fighter. Now, Brian Tighe has been a custom knife maker for decades, and he's from Canada and makes some really awesome knives. These handles do look quite similar on his knives. He likes to do these intricate milling lines on them. He's got always kind of these really intricate names like the Tighe Fighter or the Tycoon or the Tighe something else. Anyways, this one is the Tighe Fighter. So it's RWL 34 steel with a compound grind. Now this one's a little bit opposite from the Olamic in my last video where you had a bit of a thinner grind over here with a thicker tip. This one actually has a bit more of the thinner cutting portion of the blade right here, more the robust shaving right here. Kind of a different opposite view of compound grinds, but kind of cool. I think useful both ways. Very dramatic on the handle here, a lot of grip, very comfortable. The clip is another thing that he does kind of his own way. You'll see his signature right here with this little ceramic ball pressed in. Clip works really, really well. He's got this kind of unique hardware here on the back. I don't know if that actually goes through or if it's just a little medallion or what it is. But yeah, overall pretty darn cool. Now this knife is a button lock. It does have a forward finger choil on it, so you can choke up on it. The action on it is very smooth. For a button lock, I've always felt like they need a little bit of wrist because, you know, they're not working off of a spring. They're just working off of the inertia. So where Brian puts his flipper tab, I think is a good spot. So you can light switch it pretty well and kind of overcome the button lock pretty smoothly. But it is a little bit different, you know, overall. Now this one actually has copper inside the carbon fiber, but it's kind of hard to see. It's not something you see a lot of through this carbon fiber. You can maybe see a little bit right here, which is kind of a shame. I think if you would have milled it a little bit thinner, it might have come out more, or maybe a different piece. So there's that guy. Next up, we have the S5. Now, this is a Michael Zieba S5 Southern Star. This knife's really special to me because it's really contoured, and it's the first knife I ever actually bought from Mike back in the day. And yeah, really cool blade. You got this kind of folding kukri with this huge clip, which works really well. You got your skulls right here so that they imprint on your enemy's forehead when you smack them around with it. And you got this beautiful M390 kukri style blade with this really pronounced fuller on both sides. So Michael Zieba is the guy who makes this knife and constructs it, but it's also designed in collaboration with Jason Knight, one of the former Forged and Fire judges. Now this one in particular is very special because on the inside, all the scales are actually lined with skulls. It looks like you have stolen souls all up inside the knife. And it's on both sides. So this knife is just full of skulls inside and out. Pretty cool. Beautiful action on it. The only thing I think I could complain about is that this actually little tip right here does really, it can make your finger raw for sure, because the detent is a bit stiffer on this guy. But man, it is just like a fixed blade in your hand. the way that the thickness of the handle is and the way that it's contoured, you can tell someone who knows how to make fixed blades really designed this. So I love the S5. It's just a beautiful cutting tool, just really well made. And yeah, very, very nice. Highly recommend it. As far as the Stolen Souls edition version, I think those are kind of hard to find, but you can find them here and there. If you do so, just go to the Michael Zieba website or Facebook group, actually. And there's a couple of them. I'm in 2 of them, and I see them from time to time. They do make some other finishes too. I think he has one called like the smoke finish, which is actually more of a multicolor finish. But anyways, let's move on to the last 2 pieces. This one being the Sharp by Design Arch Nemesis Dagger. Now, I was begging Brian to make me a knife for years and years and years, every once in a while. I think once every like 8 or 9 months. For the first couple of years, I asked him. It didn't happen. One day, I asked him, and I received. And I was able to finally get a knife by Brian. And of course, out of all his models, the dagger was the one that I had to have. So he made me this beautiful fullered dagger. And it's made of nitro V steel, and you can see all the fine milling marks all the way through the blade and through the handle. And then you can also see that this one, I always joke and say it's made of kryptonite, but it's got the Raphir Noble, uranium Raphir Noble, that I sent over to him to make this one glow in the dark. So it doesn't glow very long or anything like that, but it's just pretty damn cool. It's the only dagger like it, so it's kind of a one-off. Everything about this knife is amazing. It's symmetrical. It's just beautifully proportioned. It's comfortable in the hand. It's actually really sharp on both edges. I mean, it's just super damn cool. So if you can get your hands on a dagger, please do so. Last one, but not least, is gonna be what was in the sock.
Giant mindfuck.
That's right, we have a CASWELL morphing Karambit. Now, you don't have to buy this because the Provoke is what really made this knife more popular and accessible to most. This was a Kickstarter project by CASWELL, and but this one is a bit different than the Provoke. This one's actually made of titanium. It's got a very high grade like finish on it. It's got a CPM 3V steel blade. It's sharp as hell too. I mean, this is a legit CASWELL morphing Karambit. So it's just like, you know, the latest and greatest materials and coating and steels. It's just a high grade Provoke is really what it is. Now, I really followed these because, you know, since this design even was just a concept, I've been following the morphing Karambit. And I just thought it was a really cool concept. I'm not saying that it's useful or that, you know, like it's something everybody should have, but it's cool. I mean, it really is. So this one here's got a little bit of traction here for your thumb. And basically when it's not deployed, you know, the blade is covered up so there's no sharp edges around it. It's got just kind of like a ball detent to overcome it. And it's pretty strong. I mean, it's a good, strong detent. You can see. You can even hear how positive it is. And over on this side, well, here, you have the pocket clip. So this kind of springs out. It is milled a little bit on the inside so that it fits in your pocket. And then the blade is tucked away there. So the idea is you overcome the detent. What it'll do is it'll just kind of snap open. It's got a cool sound to it too. But this CPM 3V blade I think is pretty awesome. And you can use this as a conventional knife if you really wanted to. But it's a Karambit and it's really damn cool. And to actually close this thing, you got a little lock bar right here. And the way that it works, I usually just use gravity and just kind of shake it closed like this. But yeah,
Showing.
it is a morphing karambit. So these are my large knives that I recommend as far as cool stuff to acquire. So I hope you guys found this video informative. Please like the video, subscribe, and if you have any suggestions on the other collection videos you guys want to see, please bring them down below. Until next time, this is the Watch and Cut channel, out.